When the sergeant accused the auditor of blocking a female officer, the footage told a very different story. The auditor's camera stayed fixed on the sergeant the entire time, with no interference in the officer's duties. Turning a peaceful act of recording into a supposed crime isn't a training error, it's resistance to oversight. What makes it worse is that this behavior came from a sergeant, someone expected to lead by example. Instead, he used his rank to intimidate a law-abiding citizen without any real justification. Authorities attempted to frame the auditor as interfering with a female officer's work, but the video directly contradicts that claim. The camera was focused solely on the sergeant. Recasting a routine recording as an offense isn't accidental. It's a tactic used to avoid accountability. Coming from a sergeant, it's frankly embarrassing. They then labeled the auditor a security risk for filming officers entering and leaving the area, ignoring basic logic. The auditor calmly pointed out he was standing on a public sidewalk, fully within his rights. The irony was hard to miss. The sergeant accused him of obstruction while his own cruiser sat with doors wide open, blocking the street. When the sergeant threatened to confiscate the auditor's phone under the Evidence Act, he couldn't identify a single crime. The law permits seizure only when there is reasonable suspicion that an item contains evidence of a specific offense. Filming on a public sidewalk, even near police officers, doesn't meet that standard. This wasn't confusion, it was an abuse of power. Legal jargon was waved like a threat to intimidate compliance. Yet when pressed, no crime could be named. Without a specific offense, there was no lawful basis to search or seize the auditor's belongings. An officer claimed the auditor had been filming the sergeant stepping in and out of his vehicle. In reality, the car had only just arrived. The auditor remained on public pavement, exercising his lawful right to record, while the sergeant chose to engage him. By reframing lawful filming as targeted surveillance, the officer manufactured suspicion to justify further action. The auditor was right to challenge that false narrative. In front of his team, the sergeant escalated matters by invoking terrorism legislation simply because his vehicle's license plate appeared on camera. There is no legal basis for this claim. License plates visible in public are not specially protected, and no court has ruled that photographing them constitutes terrorist activity. Section 43 applies only when there is genuine suspicion of terrorism. Personal discomfort over a visible plate falls nowhere near that threshold. The encounter began with a false accusation that the auditor had obstructed a female officer. The footage proved otherwise. His camera never left the sergeant, and he never approached her. This bait-and-switch tactic is a common way to dodge scrutiny, and it's especially concerning when used by a senior officer. The auditor was then labeled a security risk simply for calmly filming officers in public, despite standing exactly where the law allows. While accusing the auditor of obstruction, the sergeant's own cruiser sat half in the street with its doors open, creating the very obstruction he claimed to oppose. The situation escalated when the sergeant threatened to seize the auditor's phone under PACE, yet failed to identify any crime. PACE requires reasonable suspicion of a specific offense, and lawful recording does not qualify. Legal terminology was used as a scare tactic, not a lawful tool. When reminded that policy requires officers to announce when they are recording, a female constable dismissed it as policy, not law. But those policies exist to protect public trust and ensure GDPR compliance. State agents collecting personal data are expected to be transparent. Ignoring that standard undermines accountability and creates legal risk. The situation deteriorated further when officers falsely told colleagues that the auditor had filmed the sergeant entering and exiting his vehicle, something that hadn't even happened yet. This misrepresentation was designed to justify continued intervention. The final escalation came when the sergeant invoked terrorism powers over a visible license plate, a move with no legal foundation whatsoever. Confronted with contradiction after contradiction, the sergeant ultimately retreated and drove away. His conduct, misusing legal terms, ignoring policy, and treating lawful recording as suspicious, was more than unprofessional. It represented a failure of leadership and a disregard for public rights. When lawful observation is treated as a crime, the credibility of the entire force suffers. That wraps up today's episode. If you found this breakdown useful, like, comment, and subscribe. It genuinely helps support independent coverage. And don't forget to check out Yardley Ski Auditing. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.